donkey rep in this one? Really? Yep, scrap it. Just give it a 0 out of 10. Yeah, we're done.
Ah, good old Donkey Kong. Who would have thought this unsettling gorilla from the original 1981 arcade game would end up starring in his own game and looking like this? Donkey Kong Country was a pioneer in graphical and atmospheric design at the time, and was Rareware's attempt to follow the trend of animal mascot-based platformers, and boy did they create something truly special. Not only did the game look the part, but the gameplay department was also no slouch. The game felt like a culmination of solid platformer elements, but done in their own unique style. The game was difficult, technical, extravagant, and brash, but most of all, it was just a blast to play through. Today, we're going to take a look back at what made Donkey Kong Country so great. To start off, it's hard to talk about Donkey Kong Country without bringing up the graphics. At the time, other games coming out on the system more so looked something like this, so you can imagine the wonder and awe people felt when they first got a glimpse of the title in early 1994. Rare had invested their former profits into new cutting-edge silicon graphic work machines, and their attempt at utilizing this technology for video game graphics instead of film effects is what allowed them to create these unique and cutting-edge looking models. These games looked nothing like the other SNES games, so much so that the initial marketing campaign for the title, Nintendo had to remind viewers that the game was only available on their 16-bit Super Nintendo console, as opposed to their 32-bit and CD-ROM based competition. To say that presentation was a big part in popularizing the game would be an understatement, and that presentation was only made greater by the absolutely incredible soundtrack that accompanied the game. From classics like Gangplank Galleon to Aquatic Ambience, or even the music that greets you in the first stage, Jungle Hijinks, Donkey Kong Country's music pairs perfectly with each environment and adds levels of atmospheric depth to each of these stages. The tracks in this game emphasize this atmosphere more than anything, and are heavy contributors in establishing tone throughout each level. I can mostly assure you that many people hold the water levels in Donkey Kong Country to such a high standard, specifically because of how atmospheric and immersive the track Aquatic Ambience is. This track embodies the feeling of floating around in the depths of the sea with the floaty rhythm and synth-heavy melody that pairs amazingly with the environments that Rare created for the underwater levels. There are instruments that are choreographed to sound like pocketed air bubbles or ambient noise that you would just find in the background of an underwater expedition. The overall tone of the song is mesmerizing, albeit slightly unsettling, but it is a perfect tone for the endless and mysterious abyss that is the ocean. Just take a listen real quick and tell me this isn't the greatest water level song ever created. And this is only just one example of the expertly crafted soundtrack, as many of the other levels also incorporate this level of sound design within each stage. The presentation of the game also ties into the level design philosophy, in where most platforms and obstacles are actually correlated with the environment. So you'll be jumping across treetops, traversing through caves, swinging from vines, and even riding in minecarts through abandoned mine shafts. The world you are playing through is grounded in realism, and many of the platforming elements are based on something that is going on within the stage. So for example, on the stage Millstone Mayhem, you'll have to avoid these enemies who are spinning around in these detached mills, and the gameplay is centered around that idea, having the player weave in and around areas to avoid taking damage from them. Even the small things like being able to roll around barrels or old tires lying around the map in order to use them as protection against enemies or even to jump higher adds to that sense of place found within this world Rare has created. You'll also come across these different animal pals that will help you out on your adventure, and depending on the platforming challenges ahead of you, they can be extremely helpful. You can crash through enemies with Rambi the Rhino, swim quicker and gain the ability to attack in the water levels with Enguarde the Swordfish, jump higher with Winky the Frog, and so forth. These pals do a great job in spicing up the gameplay and even allow for some specific theme levels to be built around them, such as the case with Squawks the Parrot. The main gameplay in Donkey Kong Country is also extremely tight and responsive, and it leads to controls that feel easy to learn but hard to master. The game overall is pretty challenging but fair, leaving the player feeling very accomplished after finally beating a difficult level. You're going to need to utilize your movement abilities and jumps in somewhat of a rhythmic way, and once you get comfortable with the controls, you can really cruise through levels at a speedy pace. I love that the player is able to jump out of the roll or spin move in this game, so even if you roll a little too far and end up off stage, you're given the ability to jump out of it and save yourself at the last moment. This solid gameplay core leads to amazing speedruns as well, and watching a player that really knows what they're doing, it's just incredible. I highly urge you to check out some speedrun footage if you've never seen any before. Levels in Donkey Kong Country are also designed with lots of shortcuts and secrets to collect, and the player's going to need to keep an eye out for barrels, tires, TNTs, and more while also figuring out what areas to utilize these objects on if they want to discover all that Donkey Kong has to offer. If you're anything like me and love to collect everything, you'll find yourself replaying many of the levels in order to search for any missed collectibles. Sadly though, the game doesn't really offer that great of a reward for players who collect everything, as you're only given a slightly different dialogue ending and an asterisk next to your save file to indicate that you've got everything. The sequel Donkey Kong games actually do this a little bit better and reward the player for finding collectibles by allowing them to unlock more levels as well as extra boss fights, along with unlocking true endings. But maybe I'll discuss those games in a future video. Donkey Kong Country was a historic game when it came out, and although many people might find themselves going back to replay games like the older Mario and Sonic games more so than Donkey Kong, I believe this game deserves its place amongst those titles. This was a revolutionary platformer with amazing visuals, great controls, levels with interesting and challenging designs, as well as one of the greatest soundtracks of all time, and it really stands out as a cornerstone in the 2D platforming genre. Thanks for watching, everyone. Hope you all enjoyed this look back at what I think made Donkey Kong Country so great. If you're new to the channel, maybe consider subscribing if you're interested in seeing some future content similar to this, and I hope you all have a great day.